just gave a little twice. Why has he said? The 38th plenary meeting of the General Assembly is called to order. Excellencies, the General Assembly will consider Agenda Item 11, entitled Sport for Development and Peace, Building a Peaceful and Better World Through Sport and the Olympic Ideal, close quotes. In connection with this item, the Assembly has before it a draft resolution issued as document A/78/L9. I shall now read a statement by the President of the General Assembly. Today's debate is an opportunity to focus on the incredible power of sports as an enabler for sustainable development and peace. Beyond the thrill of competition and the joy of the playing fields, sports permeates into the very fabric of our societies. Sports fosters positive change in education, health, economic growth, and social inclusion. One cannot underestimate the transformative role of sports in promoting sustainable development, particularly in the realms of education and well-being. The values instilled in athletes, discipline, teamwork, and the sheer will to succeed and persevere are the very same values that can motivate and shape the leaders and contributors of tomorrow. Sports, in its various forms, have the potential to be a game changer, not only for personal self-discovery and development, but also for the betterment of entire communities. Crucially, sports contributes to poverty alleviation by providing job opportunities on a global scale, thus breaking the vicious cycles of intergenerational poverty. From coaches and trainers to event organizers and facility managers, the sports industry is a powerful engine for economic growth, injecting vitality through economic activities like sports tourism. The socio-economic impact of major sporting events cannot therefore be overstated. These not only bring people together, but also stimulate local economies, thus creating a ripple effect that reaches far beyond the sports arena. Beyond their impact on development, sports are a powerful force for peace. The Olympic Games stands as a symbol of tolerance, peace, and cooperation among diverse peoples, cultures, and nations. Excellencies, in our relentless pursuit of equality, it would be remiss for me to conclude these remarks without commending the International Olympic Committee for its commitment and contribution to gender parity. By allocating an equal number of quota places to male and female athletes, the IOC is not only leading by example, but also signaling a stride towards closing the gender pay gap. This approach resonates with the priority I have accorded to advancing gender equality and women's empowerment during my presidency of the 78th session. Let us continue working together to reiterate our commitment to the values of the Olympic Truce, fostering an environment where understanding and collaboration prevail over conflict and strife. As we champion the cause of sports, let us also be reminded of its transformative power, particularly among the youth who comprise the next generation of humans to inherit this planet. I sound the clarion call: sports for peace and prosperity. I thank you. Excellencies, I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of France to introduce draft resolution A/78/L9.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, it's with a great deal of emotion and humility that I take the floor before you on the topic of the Olympic truce, which is before us today. But it's also with strong conviction that I speak to you, and that is that sports changes lives. Sports changes lives and changed the life of Abil Kila, a child in the village in Ethiopia. He was a shepherd, unknown to the public. He owes his participation to the Rome Games in the marathon due to destiny, replacing his compatriot Naset. And yet, it is he who was alone, barefoot, and was able to cross the threshold to become the hero of the continent, the first sub-Saharan Olympic champion, raising his voice along with a long line of African champions. In Tokyo, he entered into legend even more and was a victim of a car accident which left him paralyzed later. But it was his re-education helped him to be able to participate in a wheelchair in the Paralympic Games. Sports changes lives, and it changed the life of Fanny Bankerson, the feminine athlete of the 20th century, due to 4 gold medals in 1948 in London at the Games. But it's elsewhere that we see her again in 1948. This mother of 2 children who was 30 years old and is part of the women who dared to make sport a passion. She was a pioneer and changed people's mentalities and the way women's sports was perceived throughout the world. Over the decades, men and women, are thousands of athletes like these 2 examples I've given you who have made us cry and dream and made us proud. These are true role models and have inspired entire generations, and they succeeded due to the values of sports and the values to be able to meet the challenges of our society and contribute to a more inclusive, more egalitarian, more responsible, and better world. And they have changed our lives beyond differences and borders. Sports in and of itself is an appeal to tolerance and respect in and of itself. During a competition, religion, the cultural regime, social values have no importance. Only the results count. And very often, diversity is even an advantage because complementarity of profiles make teams better. In sports, differences make the difference. The games are the best incarnation of the powers of sport because they bring together tolerance, respect, and sharing as values throughout the world. The values and diversity of the world are married in sports and are universal. After 104 sports and millions of spectators, 3 billion television spectators, the games provide the greatest space for assembly in the world. The Olympic Games bring together thousands of athletes from around the world and is the most symbolic incarnation of the universality of young people. It's a place where, regardless of nationality, gender, color of skin, it is possible to live in harmony and in respect of other people. The village is all humanity come together in one place, in all of its diversity. This General Assembly, of which you are the dignified representatives, the athletic Olympic villages, show us that life can be better. I was fortunate to be able to participate in 4 Olympic Games. Beyond the strong moments of competition in sports, my most strong memories are in the space of fraternity within the Olympic villages. Moments of sharing, discovery, and exchanges with athletes coming from around the world, all brought together by the love of sport and a most important time in their careers, the Games. It's the whole world together in the same place, but also the whole world outside looking at you and living the same emotions. From New Delhi to Kingston, from Sydney to Nairobi, everyone holds their breath while they're watching the performance of 15,000 Olympic athletes. If these games are universal, it's because they speak to us in a language that we all understand, men and women alike. It's the language of emotions. Of course, we know that the games can't do everything, but we think that the games have a very inspiring example of values because they show us what we have in common rather than what divides us. In the current context, conflict and tension, which we all know, we are more persuaded than ever that we need the games. After 100 years of absence, France, the country of the Renaissance of the modern games, is seeing on its territory the 33rd Games of the summer, and for the first time, our country will host the Paralympic Summer Games as well for its 17th edition. France is preparing, and has been for some years now, and is looking forward to welcoming the world. This is a historic moment and an immense honor for the organization committee of the Olympic Committee and Paralympic Committee that I chair. We are also organizing this with an acute sense of responsibility, the responsibility to continue the survival of the powerful ideal of the Games. And that's why we chose a tagline, let's open the Games big. It's more than a slogan, it's a vision, which is part of our whole project. By opening up the Games big, we go as far as possible in celebrating the universality of the Games, and we will transform Paris in an Olympic and Paralympic track with spectacular games in a spirit of communion between the athletes and the public. From the 26th of July 2024, the opening ceremony of the Games will pay tribute to the universal values of sport due to its completely unprecedented concept with a boat going through the scene with athletes from around the world. Throughout the Games, the most iconic monument will become in the service of sports at the heart of the City of Light. It will be open to the larger public, like the Park of Champions around the Eiffel Tower for Olympic champions around the world. The Games is also a time for commitment, for people to be connected to their era, along the lines of sustainable development and in line with the Paris Agreement for climate change. With Thomas Barr, who is the president of the Olympic Committee, which I'd like to relaunch, as well as with all of our public and private partners, Paris 2024 is first and foremost focused on the environment by reducing carbon emissions by half compared to preceding events. For the first time in history, our Olympic Games will be 100% on parity between men and women will be put forward. The Paralympic Games will also contribute to a more inclusive society, to change the way we look at persons with disabilities. We also wanted our games to leave a sustainable and useful legacy for our society, especially for the young generations, to develop sports for their health and well-being. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, delegates, members of the permanent representation of France at the United Nations, representatives of member states, today we come to you with a strong message, a universal message in favor of peace, along with the Greek tradition of the Olympic Truce. I would like to express our gratitude to all the delegations that co-sponsored this resolution and express their support in close cooperation with the International Olympic Committee. It is with humility, given the events around the world, but also with deep-seated conviction that I stand before you. More than ever, sports has a role to play and can help us take a step towards a better world. The Paris 2024 Games are ready to do their part. Before your prestigious institution, it is my honor to present the resolution for a better world for sports in view of the Paralympic and Olympic Games of Paris 2024. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of France for his statement. The next speaker will be the European Union, followed by Morocco, Singapore, Monaco, and Qatar. I now therefore give the floor to the distinguished representative of the European Union.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I deliver these remarks on behalf of the European Union and its member states. I'd like to first express my sincere appreciation to facilitator Mr. Olivier Gabriel Richard of France and all participating delegations for their dedication to these important negotiations. The European Union stands united in endorsing and in fully supporting the adoption of this resolution. The Olympic Truce, echoing the ancient Greek tradition of ekekirya, serves as a powerful symbol of our collective commitment to peace, unity, and understanding among nations during the period of the Olympic Games. This commitment holds particular significance in the current global context. The EU acknowledges the commendable merits of the Olympic Truce resolution and its potential to foster international cooperation, encourage dialogue, and mitigate conflicts during this prestigious global event. As a group that upholds the values of diplomacy, collaboration, and peaceful coexistence, the EU firmly believes that the Olympic Truce aligns seamlessly with our dedication to a world where differences are resolved through open dialogue and mutual understanding. We extend our gratitude to the facilitator for navigating these complexities of these negotiations and for producing a balanced text. We commend the steadfast commitment to preventing the politicization of this resolution, adhering to agreed language that facilitates consensus. As we look forward, we extend our best wishes to France in the preparations for the Olympic Games in Paris 2024. Additionally, we extend our heartfelt best wishes to all the athletes who will participate in the Games, hoping for their success and the celebration of global unity. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the European Union for his statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Morocco.
Mr. President, first and foremost, I would like to thank you for convening this annual debate on sport for development and peace. I would also like to thank the Minister of Sport for France for presenting the resolution, as well as my colleague and friend, the Permanent Representative of France, for co-facilitating the draft resolution, building a peaceful and better world through sport and the Olympic ideal, that Morocco has the pleasure of co-sponsoring. I would like to commend the key role of sport not only in progressively developing peace and social progress, but also for its fundamental support for both mental and physical health. We welcome the recognition of sport as an important factor for sustainable development, contributing notably to women's empowerment and that of young people and disabled persons as well. Sport remains a driving force for peace, tolerance, mutual respect, and for promoting living together in harmony. As something that brings humanist values, its lessons of understanding between peoples and cultures means that sport has become something crucial. It is a school of life in a way that we need to continue and cultivate in order to promote solidarity and peace at the international level. It is also a key means of protecting young people from ills such as drug use and violence. Sir, the social universal dimensions of sport have been repeatedly underscored by His Excellency Mohammed VI. So there is a need here to meet the different challenge during main competitions. Sport is much more than just training champions. It requires the establishment of necessary infrastructure and the promotion of relevant laws. We see these efforts because the African Football Association, the CAF, in 2023 granted its prize to our king to pay tribute to his efforts to promote sport and foster it over and beyond in Africa. The role of sport is key in the royal vision in our country. There's a need to expand access to all women and men and all strata of society to sport. Sport is qualified as something that is crucial in terms of promoting social inclusion and fighting against vulnerability and marginalization. In line with the instructions of His Majesty the King, we ensure that sport isn't just a form of leisure, entertainment. Rather, it is an ability, an opportunity rather, to participate in various different competitions at different levels. And furthermore, it is something that catalyzes major development projects. We are looking at this carefully. Sport is perceived as a right in our country, and access to this must be ensured by public authorities. It must be a key reference point in our national practice for sport. We are aware of the importance granted to sport, and so we have a race in Morocco, 10 kilometers for peace. We've had this in place since 2017. This is at the same time as the commemoration of the Day for Sport and Development. Internationally and at the African level, Morocco has successfully organized a large number of sporting activities. The kingdom has made football a driving force for success and sustainable human development. Football, apart from its place that develops talent, is something that looks to the future. It ties in with transparent, healthy governance and investment in infrastructures and in human capital. Sir, I'd like to underscore that Morocco has organized several sporting events. It's set up teams and infrastructure, very modern ones, in line with international standards to meet the expectations of Africa's athletes. In particular, Morocco successfully hosted the 2013, 2014 and 2023 FIFA World Cup in Africa. We also had various different football events organized by the in order to organise the 2025 African World Cup. We had the Women's World Cup, bringing together many different regions in Africa. And we're going to rather host the 2024 event. We would like to highlight the role of Africa. We took the flame, so to speak, to Qatar last year. Now, we have France here, and obviously they won. We played against them, and we congratulate them on this. But really, these games, the World Cup, showed dedication and commitment. We have sought to incorporate football as something that can really tap into the potential of players. Morocco is also proud that FIFA did keep its candidacy with Spain and Portugal for hosting the 2030 World Cup. That is an unprecedented competition in football. It would bring together the north and the south of the Mediterranean, two continents, Europe and Africa. It would bring together the Euro-Mediterranean, Arab and African worlds. We would not only celebrate football, but we would foster social cohesion and cultures. We would highlight what is the best in each and every one of us. An excellent way of doing this. I would like, sir, to conclude by underscoring that success in sport in Morocco doesn't just boil down to football. Also in women's boxing, we took the gold medal, and this shows that we have a whole array of sporting talents in Morocco. We are working in different disciplines. We have won many different Olympic and other medals. The 3,000 steeple race, for example, in 2023 we were successful. This means that our athletes are real icons. They are a source of inspiration to young people. So we can see that Morocco is seeking to promote excellence in the sporting arena globally. We are making constant efforts to protect and educate young people so they can contribute to a better, peaceful world. And this is a global aim that Morocco is fully on board with as co-sponsors of numerous draft resolutions on this topic. Thank you very much indeed.
I thank the distinguished representative of Morocco for his statement, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Singapore. The floor is yours.
Mr. President, my delegation thanks France for coordinating the draft resolution titled Building a Peaceful and Better World Through Sport and the Olympic Ideal. Singapore is pleased to continue our co-sponsorship of the draft resolution, which calls for the use of sport as a tool to promote peace, dialogue, and reconciliation, and welcomes cooperation to maximize sport's contribution to the Sustainable Development Goals. Singapore also looks forward to participating in the 2024 Summer Olympic Games and Paralympic Games in Paris, and we wish France every success in its preparations. Singapore takes immense pride in our long history with the Olympic movement. Our athletes have been competing at the Olympic Games even before our country achieved independence in 1965. In fact, our first Olympic medal came from Mr. Tan Hao Liang, who won a silver medal in weightlifting at the 1960 Summer Olympics. Sport has indeed helped to build the spirit of our nation. Mr. President, Singapore believes that sport can be a valuable tool in our common quest to achieve sustainable development. We can harness sport to promote health, well-being, and lifelong learning opportunities for all, which align with the Sustainable Development Goals 3 and 4. Singapore has implemented a national initiative over the past decade called Sport Cares, which enables everyone in our society, including the most vulnerable, to experience and reap the benefits of sport. Last year, Sport Cares launched the Youth Mentoring Program for Youth at Risk. It also launched a partnership scheme with social service agencies that serve persons with disabilities. to facilitate membership sign-ups and encourage access to sports centres. The scheme is aimed at encouraging increased organised sports participation by persons with disabilities. Singapore recognises that engaging in sport instills values that go beyond the scoreboard, values such as discipline, resilience, teamwork, and fair play. The lessons learned on the playing field become life skills that individuals carry to their personal and professional lives. Sport can also help to shape national identity and to forge camaraderie amongst our citizens. For example, Singapore has built a network of sports centres, many of which are made free or available at low cost. They have become hubs of community interaction, fostering a sense of belonging and shared purpose. Sport is also a unifying force within our region of Southeast Asia. Over 6,000 athletes, including many from Singapore, participated at the 32nd Southeast Asian Games and ASEAN Para Games hosted by Cambodia in May this year. ASEAN also views sport as integral to advancing socio-cultural development and promoting peace. At its 7th ministerial meeting on sports in September, ASEAN reaffirmed its commitment to implementing the ASEAN Declaration on leveraging the role of sports in ASEAN community building and achieving the SDGs. Mr. President, under the Olympic ideal, everyone is equal regardless of their cultural background, gender, or socioeconomic status. This is how, despite the many troubles facing the world today, sport continues to foster a sense of belonging and unity, bringing people together in pursuit of a common goal. In this vein, the UN and the Olympic movement can be said to be based on similar principles: friendship, respect, and sportsmanlike competition on a level playing field. Both seek to build a stronger international community that promotes tolerance and fair play. In this spirit, let us work together to create a more prosperous, inclusive, and sustainable world for all. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Singapore. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Monaco.
Monsieur le Président de l'Assemblée générale,
Mr. President of the General Assembly, Mr. President of the International Olympic Committee, Excellencies, dear colleagues. The most recent Olympic and Paralympic Games made 3 billion people dream. Every 2 years, we marvel at the sports performances by the most accomplished athletes of the planet and the records that are beaten and unique sports moments, which each time offered an unprecedented edition. We are also profoundly marked by this symbol of world unity without precedent and which is embodied in the competition. And beyond sports itself, the Olympic Games make us dream of peace. At all time, Olympism is associated with the cessation of conflict, and the tradition of the Olympic Truce, created in 9th century before Common Era Greece, personifies this ideal and means we can travel in all safety to participate or attend the Games. In 1992, the Olympic Committee took the decision of reviving this tradition for the modern Games, and thus the resolutions of the UN on sports and the Olympic ideal to respect the Olympic truce were adopted by the General Assembly in 1993. At the time, it was the first draft resolution that was co-sponsored by my delegation after acceding to the organization. We now celebrate the 30th anniversary of Monaco's admission to the organization, and I take this rostrum to reaffirm our full commitment to a peaceful world and to a better world due to sports and the Olympic ideals. Monaco thus joins the appeal launched by the President of the General Assembly to respect the truce and commends all efforts in all areas to make peace progress. Respecting the Olympic truce from the 7th day before the opening of the Games until the 7th day after the closing of the Paralympic Games is more than a symbol. It is an obligation. If it's not a legal obligation, it's a moral obligation at the very least, to respect our common humanity, to celebrate the values of peace, friendship, and solidarity that bring us together. Any breach of the TREV, especially any outbreak of a new conflict during this period, is absolutely unacceptable. Resorting to force and non-respect of international law should never be tolerated, and violence and conflict, the main victims of which are the civilian population who see their most basic rights swept away, is simply unbearable. Mr. President, for the third time, the city of Paris will welcome the Olympic Games, and the Principality of Monaco has co-authored the draft resolution presented by France and wishes to the French delegation, the president of the IOC, and the Olympic Committee, and all the teams of Paris great success. This is a sports event which is the most followed around the world and can be used as a catalyst to promote the role and contribution of sports in many areas. And in this regard, my delegation commends the efforts of the IOC to achieve strict male-female equality in competition by allocating the same number of places to women as to men. In the 1924 Games, only 5% of women participated, whereas the Tokyo Games of 2020 saw a record created with 49% of women athletes, and perfect equality will be achieved next year in Paris, which should push us to measure the accomplishments since the last century. Beyond the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games, access to sports and practicing a physical activity should be assured to all without impediment, especially women and girls, and without any type of discrimination. Moreover, my delegation commends the efforts undertaken by the IOC and Paris 2024 to organize the Games that are the most sustainable to date, in keeping with the Olympic Agenda 2020+5 of the IOC and the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. In this regard, this edition will see the carbon emissions linked to the Games halved compared to the average of the Olympic Games in London in 2012 or Rio in 2016. Limiting new building, using 100% of renewable energies, meals that are more respectful of the environment, and reducing the use of plastics will all help us to achieve these goals. And finally, we're pleased with the participation of a team of refugees, as also happened in the most two recent Games. In this regard, we commend the commitment of the IOC via the Olympic Refugee Foundation to ensure access to sports for those young people who are displaced on all continents. Mr. President, the contribution of sports to education, health, including mental health, tolerance, social inclusion, empowerment of women, and integration of persons with disabilities is a vector for development, which is a considerable one. A true universal language, sports can bring together people in a sense of fraternity around common values, even for people who don't speak the same language. The three values of Olympism, which are excellency, friendship, and the respect, are all shared by all athletes, be they children or adults, amateurs or professionals. Respecting the rules and the adversary is the very nature of practicing sports. Likewise, respecting the Olympic Charter and the recognition of the IOC of the conditions for the Charter are part of the Olympic movement. Monaco also fully supports the mission and role of the IOC as defined by the Olympic Charter. This defines the rights and obligations reciprocally for all parties in the Olympic movement. The protection of the independence of the Olympic movement and maintaining its political neutrality and preservation of autonomy of sports is particularly important for the mission of the IOC, and my delegation fully supports it. The same is true for fighting all forms of discrimination, promoting women in sports, protecting athletes fully, and prohibition of sports, and fighting doping and the health of athletes. To conclude, Mr. President, the Olympic Games and Paralympic Games of Paris 2024 will be a great celebration of sports and will mark the history of the Games, a major milestone established in terms of sustainability, climate action, and gender equality. The Olympic slogan, higher, faster, stronger together, accounts for the values of sports which come together on the field and elsewhere. The spirit of universality and solidarity represented by the Games should prevail when we discuss world challenges in the same room. Olympism has two key words which we all need, especially today, and those are solidarity and peace.
I thank the distinguished representative of Monaco. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Qatar.
السيد الرئيس بداية
Mr. President, we first and foremost welcome the fact that the General Assembly has chosen this to talk about sport for development and peace. We congratulate France for his excellent efforts in facilitating the resolution Building a Peaceful and Better World Through Sport and the Olympic Ideal. We welcome the fact that the state of Qatar has co-sponsored this resolution, in particular thanks to its very important parts that reflect what the state of Qatar believes in as to what sport is in terms of an essential factor for sustainable development and its main role in bolstering peace and development. We are very proud of our participation, standing alongside the Principality of Monaco, in the group of Friends of Sport for Sustainable Development. We are very much looking forward to the Olympic and Paralympic Games in Paris in 2024, and we wish the Games every success. Mr. President, the Sustainable Development Plan 2030 and that agenda to enshrine important contributions of sport for development and peace has not forgotten the role of sport. Sport encourages tolerance and respect. It helps to empower women, young people, societies and individuals. The state of Qatar, sir, pays particular importance to investing in sport and sports activities. We are convinced that this is an investment in societies and peoples. Sport, indeed, has this incredible ability to strengthen values of cooperation and understanding between people. We have thus made major efforts over the years to strengthen and develop sports facilities and infrastructure, and they meet high international standards. Qatar was one of the first to adopt a National Day of Sport. We celebrate this every year. Sir, we did this in February, the second Tuesday of every February. We had the exceptional World Cup of 2022 in Qatar. We hosted that. This was a time where we were able to extend a warm welcome to millions of citizens from throughout the world. This was an excellent opportunity to disseminate values of peace, understanding, and tolerance between peoples. During that time, we started the Scoring for the Goals campaign. This calls for solidarity and understanding to achieve the SDGs on the sidelines of the World Cup. We are delighted that the World Cup that took place for the first time in the Middle East and in the Arab world really was the most environmentally friendly. It was a cornerstone for peace and development. It was also an important opportunity for my country to demonstrate its Arab identity and its national culture. The state of Qatar last year presented a draft resolution, World Cup 2022, organized by the International Federation of Association Football. This underscored that sport plays a key role in strengthening human rights and fundamental freedoms. It recognized the important contribution of sport in strengthening education, peace, equality between people, social integration, and health on the local, regional, and international levels. Sir, Qatar reiterates its commitment to work with all partners to strengthen the role of sport, in particular because of what it represents as something that brings together humanist values and promotes understanding between peoples and cultures throughout the world. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Qatar. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of China.
Mr. President, the Olympic Truce has a long history, carrying with it humanity's dream for peace and persistent pursuit of peace. It is in line with the UN's mission to maintain international peace and security. Since 1993, the General Assembly has adopted the Olympic Truce resolution 14 times. The resolutions call for the observance of the Olympic Truce from 7 days before the opening of the Olympics to 7 days after its closing. The world we live in is mired in chaos and turmoil, plagued by global security instability. In this context, it is of particular importance for the General Assembly to adopt a resolution calling for a truce. Therefore, China welcomes and supports the draft resolution on the Olympic truce submitted by France. We also joined the co-sponsorship. We wish wholeheartedly the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris every success. We also call for upholding the political neutrality of the Olympic movement. We reject any politicization of Olympic events and sports at large. Mr. President, from one world, one dream to together for a shared future, China has actively participated in the Olympic movement, carrying forward the Olympic spirit and working on the ground to enable sports to play their important part in advancing peace and development. Following the success of the 2008 Olympic Games, Beijing successfully hosted the 2022 Winter Olympic Games. The Beijing Winter Olympics was the first Winter Olympics held after the word "together" was added to the Olympic motto. The game's success was guided by the philosophy of safe, green, sharing, openness, and integrity. It was based on a full implementation of the Olympic Agenda 2020. It took place despite the overwhelming challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. It succeeded in bringing the world together in the spirit of peace, friendship, and unity. It has proved itself to be a minimalistic, safe, and splendid event. Mr. President, sport is our common language. The Olympic movement gathers people from different ethnicities, skin colors, religions, and beliefs from all corners of the world to compete on a level playing field, to pursue excellence, and off the field to exchange ideas and foster friendships based on mutual respect and on an equal footing. Sportsmen and women from all over the world come together to compete for gold and silver medals. They are rivals on the field and friends off the field. They progress together, reaping gains together, and taking away with them unity and friendship. This speaks precisely to the value of the Olympic spirit: faster, higher, stronger together. An enlightening idea for countries to get along with each other in a correct way, and for the international community to embrace challenges together. In the face of a convolution of global challenges, we must transcend our differences in ideology, social system, and ethnicity and culture. We must reject all forms of prejudice and discrimination. We must strengthen solidarity and cooperation for the sake of our common future. As an active participant in and contributor to the Olympic movement, China will join all parties to continue to carry forward the spirit of the Olympic movement, fulfill its purposes, and make greater contributions to advancing peace and development and enhancing humanity's welfare as a whole. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of China. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Guyana.
Thank you, Mr. President. And my delegation is pleased to have once again co-sponsored this resolution, building a peaceful and better world through sports and the Olympic idea. We also commend France for spearheading this process by facilitating this important text and wish them well in hosting the Games at the 33rd Olympiad in 2024. Mr. President, 12 centuries after the Olympic Truce was established in ancient Greece to allow for the safe participation in the Olympics of athletes and spectators alike from Greek states that were at war with each other, one may be tempted to question why humanity has not yet been able to relegate wars to the dustbins of history, thereby rendering the Olympic truce a necessity of ancient times and not for today. However, It is in recognition of the political realities in which the Olympic Games exist that the International Olympic Committee decided in 1993 to revive the Olympic Truce to protect athletes and sports in general. Equally significant is the recognition of the power of sports as a unifier, a uniter, a peace builder, that the concept of the Olympic Truce was revived to harness the power of sports to promote peace, dialogue, and reconciliation broadly. In a world where conflict and the threats of peace continue to proliferate, the role of sports is even more integral as we promote a world of unity, tolerance, and understanding amongst our peoples and nation. Mr. President, sports help us to be better. Sports help us to develop habits which are useful throughout life, such as discipline, which helps us to be better citizens and to achieve the goals we set out for ourselves. Treating others with fairness, respect, including your opponents, especially in times of challenges, are tenets of good sportsmanship, self-discipline, and leadership, which are developed through one's involvement in sports to help overcome adversity. Investing and promoting in sports is therefore integral in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and a peaceful world. Mr. President, from millennia to contemporary time, the world's preeminent sporting competition, the Olympic Games, brings our world together and is celebrated in unifying fashion. Religion, race, ethnicity, political background, and ideology, the factors that sometimes retard our ambitions for a peaceful and prosperous world, are replaced with solidarity, inclusivity, tolerance, and yes, healthy competition. It is in this spirit that we must embrace and strive to build a more peaceful and prosperous world and a stronger and better United Nations. Guyana commends the International Olympic Committee, the International Paralympic Committee, the International Olympic Truce Center in the efforts of mobilizing national sport bodies to take concrete actions in supporting and promoting the culture of sports through peace. We commit to work with them to intensify our local, national, and regional efforts to use sports as a tool for development of peace and the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. In closing, Mr. President, Guyana and the Caribbean community have experienced firsthand the unifying nature of sports. We are bounded together by cricket. As a West Indian cricket team is comprised of players from various Caribbean countries. This is a unique arrangement in the world of sports. Cricket forms part of the social glue that holds us together as a community. It brings us collective ecstasy and collective sadness too when we lose. But more than that, it unites us as one Caribbean. Cricket is our anthem. It is in our veins, it is in our blood. And our anthem, as our anthem says, no noble thought brought us here to this region, but through it all, we have risen above. This outlook is similar to the Olympic idea, and it's a lesson we can all, draw from, and we must rise above. Mr. President, in closing, we once again express our full support for this resolution, which will be adopted today. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Guyana. I now offer the floor to the distinguished representative of Japan.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are grateful for the introduction of the resolution by Mr. Tony Estangue, the President of the Paris 2024 Organization Committee. Since the Olympic Truce resolution was first introduced on the occasion of the 1994 Lillehammer Winter Games, the state of the world has changed dramatically over the past 30 years. The spirit of this resolution, building a peaceful and better world through sport and the Olympic ideal, is once again gaining importance today. And in this regard, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to France, the host country of the Paris 2024 Games, for its initiative in presenting this resolution. In 2021, after a one-year postponement, Japan hosted the Tokyo Olympic and Paralympic Games, despite the difficulties caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. While people had to live under various restrictions, the athletes gave us dreams, hope, and the strength to move forward, even under unprecedented circumstances, through showing their insurmountable efforts towards the Games. the Tokyo 2020 Games taught us once again the value of sports. The Tokyo 2020 Games also produced results in various initiatives that were promoted alongside the Games. One such initiative is the realization of an inclusive society, which aims for a society where all people, regardless of disability, gender, or age, can respect each other's human rights and dignity. The Tokyo 2020 Games promoted the awareness of a barrier-free mindset and expanded the use of universal design. Another initiative is reconstruction and regional revitalization, in which our efforts directed towards aiding the reconstruction of areas affected by the Great East Japan earthquake in 2011 and promoting the ongoing reconstruction progress with the world. Japan also advanced regional revitalization through host town exchanges between local municipal governments and athlete delegations. Furthermore, with the aim of creating a sustainable society, the Tokyo 2020 Games achieved net zero carbon dioxide emission by utilizing hydrogen energy and recycling technologies, and the Games also widely promoted public awareness of sustainability and lifestyle changes. These achievements of Tokyo 2020 Games have contributed to the ongoing legacy today. At the same time, we will continue our efforts to expand the Olympic and Paralympic movement through Sports for Tomorrow, Japan's initiative to spread the value of sports around the world. To conclude, Japan hopes that the Paris Olympic and Paralympic Games in 2024 will realize the ideals and objectives of this Olympic Truce resolution and succeed, as the Paris 2024 slogan says, Games wide open. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Japan. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Greece.
Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, first, I would like to congratulate France as the host country of the Olympic and Paralympic Games next year for presenting the draft resolution, Building a Peaceful and Better World Through Sports and the Olympic Ideal, to be adopted by the 78th session of the General Assembly of the United Nations. The United Nations have always played a key role in the contribution of sports to peace, as well as through the confirmation of the modern notion of the Olympic Truce. In 1993, Greece initiated the Resolution 4811 on the observation of an Olympic Truce by calling on all member states to observe the truce during the Olympic and Paralympic Games, and underscoring that the Games can serve as a catalyst of peace, development, and diplomatic dialogue.
After the resolution comes at the right time to remind us of the true spirit of Olympic ideal, based on principles of peace, dignity, mutual respect, equality, tolerance, inclusiveness, and fair contest, with a view to creating peaceful and thriving societies where the spirit of fair play prevails and violence is banned. We are currently at a very critical conjuncture for global peace. We need useful tools and bold initiatives to promote a 2030 agenda aimed at eliminating poverty in all its forms. Greece retains an emblematic role in the Olympic and Paralympic Games as the historical and cultural origin of the Games. The goals of fair competition and personal achievement reflect the philosophical ideals of ancient Greece, establishing the tradition of the Olympic Truce, the Olympic flame, the torch relay, which symbolize the enduring bond between the ancient and modern Olympics. During the ancient Olympic Games, a truce was announced. The Olympic Truce, ekechirия in Greek, which historically has been the cessation of hostilities 7 days before until 7 days after the Olympic Games, was to replace the cycle of conflict with a friendly athletic competition every 4 years, according to the legendary Oracle of Delphi. During the cessation of hostilities, athletes, artists, and spectators were allowed to travel to Olympia, participate in the Olympic Games, and return to the homeland in safety. In today's world, torn by war and conflict, the meaning of Olympic truce and kechiria is more relevant than ever. Although the idea of Olympic truce was born in the 8th century BC, it is becoming more and more pertinent. Armed conflict, the use of weapons of mass destruction, cyber attacks, disputes with the control of space cause unprecedented suffering and pain, making the truce even more imperative. We are not as optimistic as to expect that 2 weeks of truce, as long as the game lasts, will bring peace and reconciliation all over the world and transform the grim reality in so many countries. But it is a start. It may sow the seeds and instill the conviction that only peaceful nations can prosper and thrive. We strongly believe that the young athletes who will make their honest and ethical efforts during the Games will be heralds of the truce notion worldwide and convey the message of tolerance, goodwill, and peaceful settlement of the truce. Mr. President, this is exactly why we appeal to all members of this Assembly to vote in favor of this draft resolution and to adopt it, building a peace and a better world through sport and the Olympic ideal. I thank you so much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Greece. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United Arab Emirates.
Mr. President, please allow me to thank you for convening this important meeting to discuss this topic. We support the draft resolution put forward, which we co-sponsored, based on our support for the principle of sports for peace. We wish France every success in organizing the 33rd Olympic Games and the 17th Paralympic Games in 2024. The world today needs to find means to promote communication and human understanding, including through sport. Sport has its own unique universal language through which it helps communities overcome differences regardless of their cultural, linguistic, and religious differences under the banner of cooperation, mutual respect, and sportsmanship. Sports provides youth with immense opportunities and helps promote economic growth. It also helps achieve the SDGs, particularly SDG 3 on good health and well-being. For this reason, it's important for its importance for the international community to continue to support and finance and make support accessible to all, mainly in developing countries, through accessible infrastructure and facilities. Efforts should also continue to harness sport as a tool to promote the values of peace. For the United Arab Emirates, sport is a pillar of our internal and external policies. We continue to invest in this important sector, and we continue to build the capacities of competent authorities, including through the implementation of the National Sports Strategy for 2031. This strategy aims to develop sport in the UAE and to increase the number of people practicing sports and participating in international and local championships, including the Olympic Games. Adopting laws is important to promote sport. My country, for example, promulgated a federal sports law to regulate sport and make sporting events accessible to all in the country. As part of our efforts to make sport a pillar of peaceful and prosperous societies, we are also keen to host several championships of different types at regional, sub-regional, and international levels. In this context, it's important to encourage states across the world to host championships if requirements are met. These championships are an important opportunity to promote convergence, rapprochement, and peaceful coexistence among societies. There are also an opportunity to break the negative stereotype. They also allow participants to come together and to exchange views and learn more about their cultures. On this occasion, we congratulate Qatar on its successful hosting of World Cup 2022. This was an achievement for the Arab region, and we look forward to hosting more such championships in our region. In conclusion, Mr. President, as wars and armed conflicts proliferate around the world, the international community should pay attention to the conditions of athletes affected by these crises that pose a threat to their life or prevent them from participating in championships. Recently, for example, the Palestinian soccer team had to suspend its sporting activity because of the current escalation in the OPT, and one of its team players was killed because of the ongoing Israeli shelling on the Gaza Strip. In this context, it's important to extend protection to athletes and civilians in times of conflict in accordance with international humanitarian law. Efforts should also continue to reach an immediate ceasefire and to restore life to Gaza. In conclusion, the UAE will continue to support the sport. We will continue to leverage sport to promote the values of fraternity among peoples, looking forward to a better and safer and more stable world for all young men and women across the world. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United Arab Emirates. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Belarus.
Mr. President, in any country, the culture of sport is a fundamental part of people's society. It serves as a basis for social cohesion, it builds values and national spirituality. People's health and developing physical education and sport are priorities for Belarus's social policy. We believe that it is precisely large-scale sports movements that are the very foundation of the pyramid which we call sport is the greatest achievement. Thanks to our consistent development of this area, the conditions for people to engage in sport in Belarus have been put in place for all. Sport has a unique ability to inspire people to be their very best. It is furthermore imbued with important values: fair competition, teamwork, respect for one's opponent. These values are incidentally applicable also to intergovernmental relations and should be the basis for civilized interaction between countries. Sport brings people together from different backgrounds and faiths, different cultures, and of different nationalities. Sport's ability to overcome boundaries and language barriers means that it is an effective way of strengthening lasting peace and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. This year, Belarus was granted the honour of hosting the second Commonwealth of Independent States Games. There, more than 2,000 athletes from 22 countries of the world participated. They competed for medals in 20 types of sport. These sports events showed the entire world sport's creative and unifying potential and were a humanitarian instrument for people's diplomacy. We are convinced that given global instability and the divisions in the world, together we need to continue our efforts to turn sport, which has a unique unifying potential, into a driving force for comprehensive socio-economic development. It can do this by promoting solidarity and fostering cultural diversity. Belarus is completely against the politicization of global cooperation in the area of sport. we call upon the international sporting community to refrain from any discriminatory steps and stick to the spirit and letter of the provisions of the Olympic Charter. Our country, in turn, remains committed to developing a depoliticized international sports cooperation and to strengthening friendly links between peoples based on the embodiment of the Olympic ideals. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Belarus. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Panama.
Gracias, señor presidente. En el año 2000.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the year 2013, the United Nations declared the 6th of April as the International Day of Sports for Development and Peace to raise awareness about the role played by sports in promoting human rights and economic and social development of peoples. As recognized in the resolution that we are approving today, sports contributes to the promotion of education, cooperation, solidarity, equity, and social inclusion, and it is an important facilitator of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The Olympic and Paralympic Games are more about the meeting of cultures, different cultures, and promotion and exchange between the representatives of different countries, bringing them together despite diversity. This is a time to appreciate the possibility of this in Paris next year, where Panama will participate with a modest number of athletes. Also, we join in the call for countries to commit to and support the athletes, and that the sports spirit always prevail. This means setting aside economic, political, and social differences. It means opening thereby the doors for athletes to be able to show us their sports capacity. Mr. President, in the recent Pan American Games that were held in Santiago for 2023, Panama brought 92 athletes who achieved the best sports result that our country has achieved throughout its entire history of participation in these continental games. This was achieved through efforts of the Panama Olympic Committee, efforts that were undertaken to set up a program for detecting sports talent throughout the country. This program seeks to identify and empower young people with sports abilities. We also hosted the Pan American Surf Championship, and we've made significant progress towards the Olympic goal. We have established a roadmap for development, which is focused on transparency, competition, and integrity. Moreover, through sports diplomacy, we have been able to build bridges since the universal passion for sports activities transcends social barriers and linguistic barriers. It's key to support the initiatives of human development through sports. Sports is an instrument that can promote the values of tolerance, nonviolence, and solidarity within states and amongst them. Finally, Panama would reiterate that sports helps us to overcome our differences and impediments to create a world which is safer, more peaceful, and sustainable, and thereby build a better world, a world in peace for all the inhabitants of this planet. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Panama. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United States.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm honored to represent the United States in the General Assembly today. It's wonderful to join colleagues from the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, including Board Chair Jean Sykes and Michelle Schwartz of LA28, the organizing committee for the 2028 Games. I'd like to acknowledge and thank our French colleagues including, of course, Ambassador Ducroquet and Mr. Estang for their tremendous work preparing for the 2024 Olympics and Paralympic Games. As we count down to 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games, the United States is pleased to co-sponsor the Olympic Ideal Resolution, which demonstrates our commitment to building a peaceful and better world through sport. Sports provide a powerful vehicle to change lives, transform communities, and inspire the world. We deeply believe that sports can advance common goals such as social inclusion, gender equality, and sustainability. As the Olympic Ideal Resolution states, sports can promote sustainable development, build tolerance and respect, foster women's and youth empowerment, and drive health and education goals. We applaud all who work to cultivate an atmosphere of peace, development, resilience, tolerance, understanding, accessibility, and inclusion at the 2024 Paris Games and other mega sporting events. The United States appreciates the International Olympic Committee's efforts to promote peace and human understanding through sport and the Olympic ideal. It's a pleasure to be here today with IOC President Thomas Bach. The United States shares the IOC's vision of building a better world through sport, as well as its working principles of universality and solidarity, unity in diversity, autonomy and good governance, and sustainability. The three core values of the Olympics, excellence, friendship, and respect, are not only important tenets for the Olympic Games, but also for the United Nations and all member states as we pursue the Sustainable Development Goals. The Olympic and Paralympic Games captivate the world. There is nothing quite like the Games, and we greatly anticipate bringing the Olympic flame to the U.S. soil in 2028. We applaud the French government and the Paris 2024 Organizing Committee for their dedication to an event that catalyzes innovation, builds sustainability in sport, and leads to more just and equitable sporting events. Like our French colleagues, we are dedicated to ensuring the most sustainable, inclusive, and equitable Olympic and Paralympic